Longhorn Nation, 41st Acre back with you here, previewing Texas versus Ohio State semifinal matchup, first year of the college football playoff. Dallas, technically Arlington, Texas, Jerry World, 6:30 p.m. on Friday. That's tomorrow, so we're doing this a day ahead of time. We've had a lot of time to think about this matchup and kind of see what other people are saying and take a look at film and rethink our own thoughts as well and what happened against Arizona State and Clemson and other games throughout the year and how Texas can come in and perform and win this matchup and get to a college football final the next week. So as always, we're unfiltered, a little biased, 100% truthful. Currently, Ohio State is a 6-point favorite. The over/under is 53.5. So I think one of the buzzwords right now in this game is recency bias. If you've watched any of these college football playoff games right now, Ohio State looks unstoppable. And I even said it myself, like, I don't want to play them. Like, they look like the best team in college football. However, they're beatable. They have 2 losses. Embarrassing loss to Michigan. They've bounced back well. Credit for that. Lost to Oregon earlier in the season, where Oregon played a good game against them and beat them. It was in Oregon. It was in Eugene. Ohio State had a chance to win that game at the end of the game. Kind of ran out of time. So anyway, they are beatable. Although recency bias tells you that they look unstoppable. Texas, on the other hand, is looking very beatable. Coming off a close win against Arizona State. They covered the spread against Clemson, but that was a game. So not quite the same coming into this game as far as what you see tells you about these two teams. And Lou Holtz told us that Ohio State is tough, so they got a tough team and they'll be ready to play. So Justin, let me go to you for some initial thoughts, and if you want to touch on some stats for the year from Ohio State and what kind of we're looking for from that team.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. Good to talk with you guys again. It's been a fun week, an interesting week, a week full of a lot of people just pumping up Ohio State. Well deserved for the past 2 games they've played and not really considering what they did all season long. And a lot of people really looking at mainly what Texas did against Arizona State. And not that their regular season was anything more impressive than Ohio State, but really basically just taking one game out of the entire season. Maybe if you include the Georgia game and saying Texas can't do it, Texas won't show up. So I'll say this in regard to recency bias. Man, I was with you. I texted you. I said, look, my initial thoughts day after those games were played was Ohio State wins by 10 or more. Because it was just so easy to go from watching those 2 games back to back and just saying, yeah, Texas doesn't have a chance. Now, the longer you get away from that, the more the recency bias goes away. You can kind of start to understand that, okay, it's a lot more than just what happened in the last 2 games. So I'm here for it. I'm ready to talk about it. Just bought some tickets today, so I'll be going up with the wife and a couple friends. Looking forward to being there, win or lose. It's in Texas, so being able to drive there is a lot better than flying to Atlanta or wherever else we might have to go in these other games. So obviously we know, a lot of players to watch out for. I think Mel Kiper has 27 players on his big board, 27 potential NFL draft picks, which is insane. Like the amount of scouts and everything that are going to be there. This is real talent. This is the future of the NFL that you're going to be seeing here. Not all of the future, but a lot of players and maybe more right now that are going to be on that field playing against each other, going to be playing on Sunday. So that's something pretty remarkable to go see. On offense, obviously, that's where I pay a lot more attention to due to my college fantasy background. But Will the Pill or the Thrill Howard, depending on which one you get, 3,500 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. We'd all know about Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. Jeremiah Smith is an absolute alien, just a freak of a wide receiver. 1,200 yards receiving, 14 touchdowns. Like, I don't know how he's doing it. It's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen out of a true freshman, if not the most incredible. And then Henderson and Judkins, they're both 75 yards away from 1,000 yards each. Like, their stats are almost identical. So they're just, they're loaded on the offensive side all around. And another fun fact that we're going to talk about, or stat, I guess, kind of something just to kind of keep in mind as we go into the beginning of this game and into the beginning of this discussion. Ohio State on the season has only, and I'm air quoting for those on the podcast, committed 57 penalties. Right, 57 penalties over. Well, they played 14 games so far. 14 games so far. 57 penalties for 520 yards. Texas, on the other hand, 97 committed, again, using air quotes, committed 97 penalties for 775 yards. Almost a 2-to-1 ratio there. I don't love that going into it. I don't know if it says Texas is undisciplined or if it goes kind of what we talked about in the past where SEC just throws a little bit more flags here and there and Texas just doesn't get the calls, right? Even if you go back and watch Arizona State game, I don't know one time where Texas got a call. So I'm looking forward to just kind of seeing how this game is reffed. I need to look at the ref and see who the refs are. I'll look that up while you get going on us, though. Brett, what do you got on the first thoughts about the game?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, how exciting is it? I mean, a few years ago, would either one of you say that we'd go to the college football playoff semifinals 2 years in a row? I probably wouldn't have. I mean,
that would have been tough.
After the past decade and a half of Texas football misery, it sure is fun to be on the winning side of things again. Being able to host this podcast into early January of 2025, that was a little bit unexpected. So it's really fun. I mean, just in general, it's fun to see Texas at the top again. And regardless of how you feel about them, regardless of what you thought about in the last game, like Texas is always been a big brand, but now they're a notable football team. They're going to be competitive for the next few years. And I think it's just been so much fun to watch this team mature and get to the top again this year. As far as the game goes, Ohio State, I think everybody had the same impression between the three of us as to how do you even slow this team down, and how did Texas get so unlucky with this draw after we got so lucky with the first two? Why couldn't we have gotten Penn State or Notre Dame to play? But when you kind of dig down into the elements of what Ohio State is, how they score, how they play defense, I think they are a beatable team, and we know they're a beatable team. They've been beaten this year twice. One of those times by a team that Texas dominated earlier in the season, right? At their own home field, at the Horseshoe. So it is a beatable team. And to Ben's point, I mean, recency bias would tell you, though, that they are unstoppable. So I know we'll get into some of the details as to how we think that Texas can compete and can ultimately try and beat this team, or what they're going to have to do in order to beat a team like this. But no, I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful that we're still talking Texas football. I went back to our notes for our season preview, actually, today, because it flashed up on my screen. And Justin, you had a comment in there about how excited you were for college football to be back. And you said just excited that, Texas for the next 12 to 14 Saturdays is going to be still playing. Well, I think now this is our 16th game, right? Is
They're
it
12-2?
12, and this will be the third one. Yeah, this is the 16th game. So this will be our third playoff game. We played in the SEC championship, and then plus the 12 regular season ones. How exciting is it just that we're still talking about college football this late in, and our team's still extremely, extremely relevant? So I'm excited. And it's also a preview. I don't think we touched on this yet. This is also a preview of the first game of the season for next year.
Yeah, so take your notes, all right, chumps?
Yeah. So one of these two teams is playing the other twice in a row.
Yep, that's true. Oof, bad taste in the mouth.
What an awesome setup. Whoever made this, whoever programmed this, what a great job. Hey, I was thinking
about this. It was the refs from last week. The refs from last week actually programmed it. Like, we got to have Texas and Ohio State play. We can't let Arizona State go in this one.
Justin, I was thinking about your these running backs for Ohio State going, both potentially going over 1,000 yards. And Brett, you'll appreciate this. I was thinking about the Seinfeld episode when George was giving hitting lessons to Derek Jeter, and he's like, we won the World Series last year. He's like, yeah, in 6 games. It's like, well, I ran for 1,000 yards. Like, okay, in 15 games. I mean,
way to go.
Now they are. Actually, I was looking, like, the running back numbers are kind of similar between Texas and Ohio State. The only real difference is their yards per carry is higher. But so they run the ball less. They have similar yardage. It's just dispersed a little different. Like Wisner is over 1,000, and then Blue's a little bit behind him with like 800 or something. But their guys are like 900, So it was very similar running back stats, but except for the yards per carry.
Here's a fun one about those penalties. I told you I was going to look that up real quick. The crew that we're getting is the same crew that did Tennessee and Ohio State in the earlier playoffs. And in that matchup, they only called 3 penalties on Ohio State.
How many did he call against Tennessee?
6. Double the amount of penalties, if you want to look at it that way.
But do you know if they were pre-snap penalties or in-game penalties?
I didn't look that far into it. I can tell you the yardage, though. That might help. 3 for 25 against Ohio State, so it sounds like there was a personal foul in there.
Yeah.
And 6 for 50 against Tennessee.
That
probably had some pre-snap. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing, the number is not concerning. The only thing that would be concerning is if, they throw a penalty early that causes some momentum to change. But that game was over early. So, again, unless those penalties happen like on Tennessee's first drive and just like Ohio State got up 14-0 quick and then Tennessee pressed. Like I kind of like that. That's what seems like a low number of penalties for a college football game that we're a part of.
So it stays that way. They are an ACC crew, so let's just hope they're not holding any hard feelings about us knocking out Clemson.
Yeah, well, they have trouble judging what a catch is. You go back and look at a couple of Miami games this year that probably should have lost.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Either way, it's not going to be the ref's fault, right?
On the whole penalties thing, I mean, which Texas are we going to get on this one? It's like we could have Clemson. I think we had 2 penalties against Clemson. Are we going to have that type of team with very limited pre-snap or no pre-snap penalties? We're just shooting ourselves in the foot? Or are we going to get, fourth quarter Arizona State where I think we had 4 pre-snap penalties?
I don't know. I
wish you did.
I'm just going to, let me give them a call and say, hey, only 3 penalties allowed, guys. I don't care which 3 you call, but only 3 allowed the whole game. That is part of my keys to victory, which we'll get into, is one of them is penalties. Like, especially second and 6, and then you go to second and 11, right? Or third and 10, third and 8, whatever. You go to third and 13, and then it's 4th and 13, and now Auburn has to go out and dunk another freaking field goal, right? Like, the bad timed, no penalties are any good typically, but I mean it's the timing of when those happen that I think is more important than anything.
Justin, that's your one warning for this podcast. You are forbidden from talking about special teams.
Oh, I'm talking about it. Westone for the win.
Oh my God.
Will did a funny he did a funny TikTok or something where he was like, we should all appreciate kickers, whatever. Then he flipped the camera around on himself, and I don't know. It was kind of funny. I don't know if that's still circulating on the internet. But yeah, maybe they make a change at kicker this week. Hopefully we don't have to kick many field goals. I have a feeling a game like this, if you don't score points in the red zone, field goals or not,
yeah.
I don't know.
Justin, you're not allowed to opine on this, but the one thing I'm scared about on switching kickers at this point in time is Will Stone's a lefty, so it changes up.
It's entirely different.
No, Justin, shut up. Only Ben's allowed to talk.
If I were to talk about it, I would say that the mechanic is different for the holder. The mechanic is different for obviously the whole unit, which side you're blocking. If I were to talk about it, I would say something like that.
That's right.
Yeah. No, let's move on. Let's move on.
Yeah, Justin, let's talk about some of these defenses. You got some stats for Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, arguably the top 2 defenses in the country. Only twice, I believe, this year did Ohio State let up 20 points or more, and there were the 2 games against Oregon. And in the second game against Oregon, they let up negative 11 rush yards. Now, granted, that includes sack yardages, so you got to keep that in mind. But still, to to go up against a team in the playoffs, in the quarterfinals of the playoffs, the number one ranked undefeated team in the Rose Bowl, and you let them run for negative 11 yards is pretty impressive. So defense is playing on fire. I have a feeling there's a lot of like we owe you one, right? Like they just were on a revenge tour for that game for sure. We have the Jim Knowles defensive coordinator. We saw him at Oklahoma State for a couple of years. That was a lot of Sark's kryptonite, if you will. He did figure out a way to beat it, and it was from the pony package, which is what we've talked about in the past, where you put in 2 running backs. I don't know if we have the pony package that we've had in the past. Our running backs were a lot stronger in years past. They're okay this year, right? But it's not the strong suit. So you might see a little bit of, honestly, you might see 4 wide receiver, which I don't know if we've pulled out at all this year, maybe very, very rarely, but you might see that as a way to break a 3 high if Jim Knowles is to run it against us, right? Because a lot of what they've been doing is actually not so much a true 3 high. They bring down, what's the transfer's name? The safety transfer. Yes. Caleb Downs. They've been bringing him down, and he's kind of playing like a 12 to 15, like 10 to 12, maybe 15 yards back, not a full deep safety, but kind of in this middle ground, like right behind the linebackers, which we know Quinn loves to feather right over that. So he's actually been playing kind of like hovering in that area to where he can come up and support the run or help out with those kind of middle of the box passes. So that is definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye out for. My last Ben. It's just, you got to know where Caleb Downs is. He's kind of like, they're like, hey, wherever you think you need to be this play, based on the tape and the knowledge you have and your instincts, go there. It's going to be similar to the 3 high defense that we've seen from Jim Knowles, but his athletes are so much better here than they would have been at Oklahoma State. So got to keep an eye on that for sure. He'll have some exotic pass rushes coming at us. Let's fingers crossed it's not too many corner blitzes. I don't know how many more of those I can handle watching. But they're the number one running team in the second half of the season, I think since like week 7 or 8 moving on. They're the number one. The defense, in my opinion, I think looks tougher than Georgia. I know that they haven't played, quote unquote, as high octane of offenses as Georgia probably played in the SEC. The Big Ten is just not quite that level of offense. They do have some good offenses, but in general, not that good. So I think it's a good luck running the ball. I think it's going to be on Quinn. A lot of those comebacks on the wide receivers, like we've been seeing those 10, 15, 20-yard hitches. And just those cornerbacks are good, obviously. I mean, they're good at all levels, but that defense is just as a unit, probably the best one we've played all season long. So, Brad, I know you had some thoughts on defense as well. I don't know where to start or where to end with that team. But it's going to be a test, and it's going to make for a good kind of styles clashing against each other, I think.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, this is a blue blood program with 5-star talent all over the place. You're not going to have the talent deficit between the two teams like you do against a team like Arizona State or even Clemson. Clemson hasn't been recruiting to the caliber of, the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Alabamas, and the Texases as of the past 3 years. Clemson was in that world a few years ago. So this is probably, outside of Georgia, the most talented team that you've played, and they've got athletes all over the field. So it's hard to count any of them out. And so it comes up to styles, and styles create what is the boxing quote? Is like styles create matchups or something like that.
Yep.
That's kind of where we're at for this game. And I noted one thing about one thing that we've really struggled with in the games that we've struggled is running the ball. We hit it a lot in the Arizona State post game. How Texas was just not able to establish a run game at all. I mean, I think we had 50 yards or something like that on the ground. I mean, it was we averaged like 1.8 yards per carry. I mean, it was abysmal. Luckily, Quinn put us, on his back and carried us to the promised land. But you can't do that. You can't expect that to win. If that is the case, if we rush for 1.8 yards per game, we are going to get beat, probably blown out in this game. So I think you have to have a pretty balanced offense. And I actually like this matchup for Texas's run game a little bit better than I did against Arizona State and Georgia. This Ohio State defensive line is outstanding. You know, they've got Jack Sawyer. They have who's the other guy that plays off the edge?
Oh,
On the other side?
I just heard him
JT
called JT. It's a pretty tough
JT
name.
Tuamalalu or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, both studs. You know, both draft picks. Actually, Jack Sawyer was Quinn's roommate when Quinn was at Ohio State, which is kind of interesting. So they're buddies. But those guys, they're notably heavier than their whole defensive line and linebackers core is heavier than these other teams that we've seemed to struggle with. This, to me, is a little bit more representative of maybe like an OU defensive line or a Michigan defensive line. Michigan's probably the better comparison. A Michigan defensive line where it's just big bodies all over the place, high level talent. But our offensive line does a very good job blocking the big boys as opposed to the quicker, smaller guys. Case in point, last week against Arizona State. Arizona State, we out-talented them all over the place. We outweighed them by 30 pounds probably on average. Yet their defensive line was able to be disruptive. Ben said it in our pre-call before this podcast. He's like, they just had a quicker first step to get past guys like Hayden Connor and those other big boys who just can't keep them in front. I have a feeling that I think we're going to be an underrated matchup in this, our offensive line versus their defensive line and running. And I think we're going to be able to connect. And when our big bodies, those guys can connect on a block, it's over for you. When you have Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, DJ Campbell, or Cole Hudson, whoever they put in there, when those guys make contact with you and, you know, you can't make a quick move to get around them, like it's over. Rarely are you going to do power through them to make a big play. Those are powerful, big bodies. So I actually like the matchup, and I'm kind of looking to our offensive line able to establish some sort of presence there to where we're, you know, gaining at least 3 or 4 yards per carry as opposed to the abysmal 1.8 from last game. So that's one of my key matchups to watch as far as the offensive line goes against their defensive line on the rushing side of things.
Yeah, I will say just in regard to the defensive line, Ohio State has always had just an incredible edge, and it seems like Jack Sawyer is that guy right now. Yeah. They've had Bosa's, right? Both of Bosa's went through there. At Chase Young, I think there's one more kid who plays for he used to play for Washington. I don't know who he plays for anymore. But they've always had somebody who's just an ultimate disruptor. So I do worry about that because if he's got the bend and the pad level and the quickness to get around some of our tackles who are, you know, potentially first round, you know, level talent, if we're worried about the quickness, Sawyer could be that guy. I'm not saying for sure he is or he isn't, but that would worry me a little bit. And in regard to like what matchup we like about our defensive line, one thing I will say about this is the Georgia offensive line was a little bigger and just more athletic. They're also like thoroughbreds, like we talked about. But those dudes were a little bigger. We should be easily put our hands on them. But that was, I think, the moment's a little too big for our guys. Like we made more of a game of it than what it should have been in the first matchup. The second matchup wasn't much better, but the overall offense was way better, right? But I'm just talking about offensive line versus defensive line. It seemed like the first game, man, we just let the moment get too big for us. And then the game against Arizona State, we had the small guys. It wasn't the moment was too big for him. I think the guys understood it. It was a pad level and effort thing. Like, okay, I don't care if he's smaller and faster than you. Like, squash him like a bug. You know what I mean? You can lay on a guy. That's allowed. You know? So if you're getting lazy and you're getting your pad level up, you're going to get pushed on your ass over and over again. And I think that's what we saw against Arizona State. And again, it could have been like the look ahead, kind of like we talked about of, you know, these are nobodies, blah, blah, blah. And Arizona State was an effort level or an effort style defense, and they came out and proved it. So I'm looking forward to watching. It is definitely a lot about what the Lions can do on both sides of the ball, and it'll be pretty impressive because I bet you these guys played each other in high school. They're playing each other now. They're going to play each other in the pros. I mean, again, we've got a lot of high-level talent on both sides of the ball here, so that matchup's going to be fun. Ben, can you hear us?
Yeah. Just
okay.
Visual, you know.
Ben, bring the mic a little close to your face.
Is this close enough?
Yeah, it'll work.
Speak loudly.
Justin, I had a question. Do you think there's going to be any bean dip at the bottom of this piles if Jack Sawyer tackles Quinn? And what is bean dip?
Oh, that is a game that you only play with your college roommates, man. We can't talk about that here. Come on now.
Yep. Hey, the only good bean dip is hot bean dip, by the way.
Hot
So
bean dip. That's right.
we all
FIU
agree
haters.
with that, and it is an appropriate thing to bring to a party, the Fritos and hot bean dip. So let's talk another matchup: wide receivers versus current Thorpe Award winner Jahdae Barron, arguable DBU of late. Jahdae Barron, Manny Muhammad, no Derek Williams, Michael Taff versus Jeremiah Smith. Kuka looks like the best receiver combo in college football this year. Jeremiah Smith, again, we've talked about, what an absolute animal of a freshman. Just he's a grown man already as a 18-year-old or whatever however old he is now. So Brett, what do you think about kind of guarding those guys? And as you get closer to the camera to try to hear, what's your take on how the Texas DBs stop this offensive weaponry for Ohio State?
Yeah, so I mean, it was hard to hear you, Ben, but I think what you're getting at was, how do our defensive backs slow down Ohio State's seemingly unstoppable wide receivers? So, yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it's like Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith is an absolute monster. Some would argue that he got snubbed for Freshman of the Year, Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year, and the winner of that award is on Texas's team, and Colin Simmons. So maybe he's a little bit, maybe he's coming out for vengeance. But I really like the matchup between Jahdae Barron and Jeremiah Smith. Number one, experience, right? Jeremiah Smith is a freshman. He's a rookie. He's made some big plays and splash plays and is an absolute freak of a specimen. But he's still young, and their experience matters in this. Jahdae Barron, on the other hand, is a fifth-year senior and first-round draft pick, and the Jim Thorpe Award winner for this year. He is one of the most studied defense. He studies as much as any defensive back probably in the country. He's always in the film room, is what the reports say. He loves finding tendencies and stuff like that. I love this matchup for Jahdae. I know Jeremiah Smith's good. He's going to get some catches. He's definitely going to get some targets. But Jahdae versus anyone in the world, when Jahdae has 9 days to sit there and watch your freshman tendencies, I love the matchup. So I think I do think Jahdae is going to be the one-on-one guy to go cover him. He's the only cornerback that we have that I would trust. Not that our cornerbacks are bad or our safeties are bad, but he's the Jim Thorpe Award winner for a reason. He's the captain on our defense for a reason. I absolutely love that matchup. And to that point, if he can guard him one-on-one or even with the safety over the top, you still have one of the best defensive backfields in the entire country to guard Egbuka and who's the other guy that they have? Tate. Yeah, Carnell Tate. So, and you've got guys like Jalen Gilbu, who's had a quiet year, but a good year. Manny Muhammad, who made some big time splash plays against Arizona State last week after the running back pass touchdown. So, and then obviously you have our safeties in Andrew Makuba and Michael Taff, who are awesome as well. So I like the matchup. I think majority of Ohio State's passing plays, the big plays, have come on splash plays. I want to talk about that here in a little bit. So I'll pass the baton on Justin, get your thoughts on that. We can talk about explosive plays in a minute, but yeah, I think I like the matchup. I think that our defensive backs are sticky, and I think it's going to create some problems, some stress for guys like Will Howard, who are going to sit there and try to make throws that maybe just aren't there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going back and watching a little bit of that Ohio State and Oregon game again, and there were definitely, not YOLO balls, but there were definitely some Oregon just misplayed that ball, and maybe we make that play, right? Kind of look like some of them look like how Texas looked in secondary last year, which was atrocious. But not that they did it consistently, but there were a handful of plays where it's like, man,
Ryan
defense probably shouldn't
Watts.
make a play. And then so Jeremiah Smith, as we talked about his season stats, are insane. His last 2 games, I think he has 13 to 14 catches for almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, that's just a manimal, right? How do you guard that? Well, we'd love to say Jade can just do it one-on-one. He can't do it all day, but I think in spots he's going to have to do it because they've, like you said, they've got 2 other 5-star receivers and I think a third one that's their 4th string, right? They've got unbelievable depth in the wide receiver room. And we have pretty damn good depth on the defensive side. We know the game is tailored to favor the offense, so we're going to lose some of those battles. That's okay. Jade is one of the most studied DBs in the country. This is a good reason why he probably won the Thorpe Award. So he's going to take some of those chances and try and anticipate some of those moves as the route tree starts to dissipate, as Jeremiah moves further, any of these receivers, to be fair, move further and further down the field. He's going to jump some of those because that's what he does. And he's going to make some of those plays, and maybe he gets a pick six or at least an interception. I mean, he did it all season long where he ran his route basically for the receiver, right? Or he'd see another receiver coming into his area and he'd leave his receiver and go there because he knew it was going there. It could also bite him, right? But you kind of have to give and take with it. You have to accept that that's going to happen, and that hopefully we just get more positive plays out of it than negative, right? Yeah. So that's going to be a fantastic matchup. I love it. Like you said, there's experience versus just pure athleticism and like alien, just his build and everything that he is in regard to Smith. I wouldn't be surprised
let me ask you a question on that.
Sure.
As far as, everyone knows that if a wide receiver has 7 seconds or a quarterback has 7 seconds to throw the ball, wide receiver is going to find his way to get open. Doesn't matter how good the defensive backs are. So how important is the Texas's pass rush defense for this game?
I think that is, a lot of how where you get with those coverage sacks, right? Like if you can cover for 3 seconds, then you give a good enough amount of time, especially because you're talking about a very good offensive line. Although Ohio State doesn't have 2 of their starters, or at least they're not in the right position from what they expected preseason to now. They kind of piecemealed a little bit. They've played a lot better lately, which is nice. But maybe PK's got some good blitzes, drawn up to get Ant Hill in there, and Colin Simmons and Ethan Burke and Baron Sorrell. I mean, we know that we've got the ability to rush the passer, right? You can see it in the stats in the season. However, I think Ohio State's only let up 13 sacks on the season. So it's not exactly something they do a lot. And Will Howard's pretty mobile. I think what you want to do is get pressure up the middle. If you go back and even watch his Kansas State, the habits he had, even when we were playing him then, he hated pressure up the middle. So if we can get Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins knocking balls down up the middle and just pushing the pile back a little bit and making him not be able to step into a throw, and also pushing him to his left was another thing I noticed. To his right, he's pretty damn good. To his left, it doesn't look like he likes to go that way. So if we can pressure him on his right, push him to his left and up the middle, and have your right edge just kind of wait, then he'll come to you and then you take him down. I mean, it's like textbook is how you want to do that, in my opinion. So that'll be really interesting if they can kind of push him in that direction. So pass rush is going to be huge. I would be interested to see if we run 3 safety some to kind of let the run game handle itself. Like we got to see if we can handle the run game with 5 and then play secondary defense with 6. Because if we can, we run a lot of zone. I think we run less than 20% man, right? So we run a lot of zone. Jeremiah Smith is good against both, which is not surprising. Jelani McDonald could be huge in this game. He could be that in-between guy, kind of like what they do with Caleb Downs. I'm not comparing him to Caleb Downs yet, but we've seen Jelani play some great football this year when he stepped in from Makuba. So if you can tell me we put those 3 safeties in there and our best 3 DBs, I kind of like those chances. If our front 5 can handle that pressure or the run game up front. So I'm looking forward to seeing some exotic stuff like that we haven't really done because of the complexity of not the complexity, but the challenges that Ohio State's offense will throw at you.
No, keep in mind too, we have, they do have studs, but guys like Caleb Downs, we beat Caleb Downs last year over the top.
Yep.
Right. So, I can find myself getting in a hole of trying to think where, their team is just so unstoppable, but there is I mean, a lot of different matchups in this game where there is some experience that Texas has against certain players. Caleb Downs got beaten for 2 touchdowns last year against Worthy, blew by him, and then Adonai Mitchell caught the game-winning touchdown or the go-ahead touchdown in the back of the end zone, both on Caleb Downs. Will Howard. Will Howard is 0-4 against Texas in his career. He's played well. He was on the team.
He was on the team.
He is 0. He is 0. He as a player, he is 0-4 against Texas.
That's fair.
All right. Yeah. And one thing I think that was a good point is when you can get pressure on him, he seems to struggle. I go back to the last play of last year against Kansas State when we went to overtime and they went for the 2-point conversion to win the game outright. And what did we do? We did exactly what Justin suggested. We brought pressure up the middle. He couldn't stand it. Tavondre, somebody tipped the ball up. Tavondre Sweat knocked it down. Game over.
Baron Sorrell scared him. I mean, he fell over.
He kind of fell backwards, kind of running. Yeah. The pressure was there though, and it got there. I would love to see our defensive line do some middle stunts. I love seeing Colin Simmons come up the middle. Kind of in that pseudo spy / blitz route that he does, where he comes back inside of Alfred Collins or Vernon Broughton, whoever's setting that on the guard, and he gets a 1-on-1 matchup with either the center or the other guard. I think that would be something to watch for because Will Howard is a mobile quarterback, but not against. He's mobile, but he's not faster than some of the freaks that we have on our defensive line.
I was going to say he's no Sam Levitt. I was actually going to say the exact same thing.
He's no Sam Levitt. Yeah, he can't. He's no Sam Levitt. He's not a Cade Klubnik. Klubnik's super fast too.
He looks to throw.
He's not a Marcel Reed. No. He's not a Traylon Green. Right. We talked about this in one of our podcasts.
No.
Guys, the quarterbacks that are rushing threats haven't done much against Texas. Sam Levitt bought a ton of time, and he's probably actually the one scrambling quarterback that actually did something positive for his team or through buying that time. But outside of that, Texas done a really good job against the mobile quarterback. You eliminate that, you're eliminating one more ball carrier in the game.
So looking back at Will Howard, when I went back and watched Kansas State tape and some other tape from their games this year, he's a step up in the pocket guy. He's not looking to escape the pocket laterally. He wants to step up and make a throw. And so I agree with what Justin said in his analysis. Got to get pressure up the middle. And, we thought, I think going back to our season preview, that might be a weakness on the team this year after having 2 defensive tackles drafted really high in the draft last year. And those guys have performed pretty well all season. Not the same level of productivity, but pretty well. So, get pressure up the middle. And then, you just need guys on the edge to clean it up. I'd like to see them. Hey, we got an 11 on our team, similar to the Cowboys' number 11. Let's move him around, and if we want to bring him on a stunt up the middle, you got somebody on the edge waiting to make a tackle.
Yeah. I love those.
I wanted to say real quick.
He chooses
Jeremiah Smith.
Howard.
Go ahead, finish, Justin.
Please do.
Go ahead, Ben. I was just going to say, Will Howard chooses when to run appropriately, if that makes sense. He chooses it at the timely parts of the game. He's got 7 rushing touchdowns, but he's only run for about 2 yards a clip on the season, right? They're going to call some quarterback draws, kind of like how Dylan Gabriel did against us with the OU game last year, where it just kind of came and like, damn, we weren't expecting that. So that's why pressure up the middle is going to be huge against him.
Yeah, they'll do QB draws.
We got to expect the quarterback draw every now and then. Just got to know the situation.
He's a big guy.
They'll get out of your rush lanes.
They'll do QB power. He's a big guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, back to the Jade. So Brett likes Jade on Jeremiah Smith. I like having Jade one-on-one with Ibuka and just taking him out of the game and double teaming Jeremiah Smith. My concern with Jade on Jeremiah Smith is Ibuka's gonna torch us in the slot. I know our team has played well, but I don't know if anybody else is. And Gilbo, I'm not confident in him covering Ibuka in the slot by himself. I'm seeing a lot of quick slants or quick outs that get beat and just move the chains. So I know Jade was in the slot and moved to boundary this year, and if that's where we want to keep him, great. I like the idea of double teaming Jeremiah Smith with your number 2 corner and a safety over the top, and then 1-on-1 your best corner on Ibuka.
Man, you could see, honestly, in this game, it depends on how it goes, but I think you could see double teams on both those guys.
Totally.
I mean, if Jade, if you have to move into like a cover 3 type defense where you have safety help over the top for Jeremiah Smith, so call that, that'd probably be Michael Taff that'd be Makuba on the boundary side, covering Jeremiah Smith with Jade Barron, and then Ibuka with Gilbo playing nickelback, and then Makuba Hunt. But that still leaves you with 1-on-1 with Carnell Tate with Manny Muhammad, and linebackers 1-on-1 against the tight end. So it's kind of like pick your poison, right? I like the idea. The reason I like the idea of Jade 1-on-1 with Jeremiah, it's because it's our best versus your best. And I really like, that's who I want to see him eliminate. If we need to do some bracket, if he can go 1-on-1, then we can do bracket help over the top of someone like Ibuka, and then, pick our poison with 1-on-1s across the rest of the field. I mean, maybe that's the way you play it. No matter what, there's going to be some explosive playmaker that's going to be left in 1-on-1 coverage. And so it truly is going to be pick the guy that you're going to let potentially beat you.
Yep, I'm with you. I think that you'll go back and forth. You'll rotate who gets the 1-on-1. You got to change up the looks because there's a chance they just say, we're going to pick on anybody but Jade. And if that's the case, then you can't just let Jade just lock down one player and let the other guy beat you. But it could just be like, you know what? My best versus your best, my 2 versus your 1. We'll take those odds and let's see what happens. The only way you can do 2 on both is if you've got your run defense is solid. That's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, there's no kidding. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. We haven't talked about that yet, but we could also see some Kobe Black too, Ben. Kobe Black, he's that freshman out of Waco Connolly. We've seen a little bit of him. He was a 5-star cornerback. They put him in that nickel position in a few games. I think notably, maybe it was the Arkansas or the Vanderbilt game. Maybe it was the Vanderbilt game, and he looks really sticky in coverage. Big type of corner. Over 6 foot tall. But you might see someone like him come in if Gilbo struggles against Ibuka in the beginning of the game.
Yeah. Well, I think we also got to keep in mind, Texas doesn't run a lot of man. We run mainly zone. Now, in the beginning, 5-10 yards until the guy runs out of your zone, it is man, right? But I think that's where I'm curious if we'll do the 3 safeties and bring in McDonald and just let the 3 of them, and we're going to talk about it, I know, but Ohio State hasn't scored a lot from inside the red zone this playoff, right? They've been scoring these huge plays. Dude, play deep, stop them in front of you. Play deep, make the tackle. Play deep, knock it away. Then when we get to the red zone, let's see, right? Let's go from there. So I think you're going to see more bend but don't break that we've been doing all season long because I think their red zone offense lately has not really, shown itself. So maybe they'll come in a little rusty, One thing I did want to say about Howard, watching some of these throws. You remember Washington last year? Freaking Michael Penix, man. Thank goodness we're not playing him. But some of those throws that he was making to his receivers in the Sugar Bowl last year, how do you stop it? The guys make an unbelievable catch. They make an unbelievable throw, and it's just one of those combos that you can't beat.
No defense for a perfect pass.
A lot of that happened in that Oregon versus Ohio State game. Some of those throws just fell into the receiver's hands and were just perfect. Now, kudos to everybody making the throw. Kudos to the guys making the catch, right? But I don't know if Will can stay that hot 2 games in a row because you see what Michael Penix, who is a better quarterback than Will Howard, period, right? What he did against Michigan was not the same player that we saw where he threw for 430 yards against us in the Sugar Bowl. So maybe he's just been around an unbelievable hot streak and that just can't maintain because we've got guys that can disrupt the ball a little bit better than maybe what Oregon's offense or defense could.
How much pressure did Oregon's defense in this past go around get on Will Howard? Do we have stats on that?
On it right now. I have pressure rate, but I've got three tackles for loss. I'm sorry. Yeah, 3 tackles for loss. I'm pretty sure they had a couple sacks, but maybe they miscalculated that.
Okay.
I thought that they had some sacks, but maybe not.
The reason I'm bringing it up is the Michael Penix comparison. Right? What happened when he got into that Michigan in the national championship game, and they were able to get ample pressure on him? He crumbled
right up the middle. Yep.
You know what could Texas not do last year? We could not
Couldn't
put pressure.
down.
I'm confident in our ability to create pressure. Like we talked about earlier. I mean, we got freaks. We got the Sean Alexander freshman of the year. We've got a lot of high level edges and defensive tackles that want to get paid in the draft this year that are out there to make a name for themselves against Ohio State. So I do actually like the idea of being able to get a little pressure. And I want to see, can Will Howard still make these dimes when he's got someone like Colin Simmons coming off his backside, or Vernon Broughton's big body and hands up in his face.
And rotation on defense is going to be, since we're talking about Texas defense versus Ohio State offense right now, rotation on defense is going to be huge, right? Some of our guys just played over 100 snaps. A lot of guys played over 60 snaps, which is way more than what you typically play with a standard rotation. Hopefully those guys are rested up. We talked about hitting that rookie wall, right? The college players are just not used to playing this many games. This is the first time it's ever happened in history, so both sides are going to be tired. But being tired on defense means a lot more than being tired on offense, right? Because you have to react to what's happening, not the other way around. So winning first down, we got to put them in 2nd and 7 or longer more consistently. And that offense, dude, that complimentary ball has to happen. If we can get complimentary ball, it's going to be.
What does that mean? What does complimentary ball mean, Justin?
Oh,
I've never seen it.
Basically, when the defense goes off the field, the offense goes, "Nice job," and that's a compliment, dude. They're just complimenting. That was for the peanut gallery. All right. So, yeah, we'll talk about some complimentary ball. But, man, just maintaining time of possession, right? Run the damn ball. Get a couple first downs. Move the ball down the field a little bit. I'm not saying you have to score every freaking possession, but do something to make sure the defense gets a good blow on the sideline. They can relax, get some water, and then get back out there and give it their A effort again.
Is complimentary ball when your defense has to play over 100 plays and your offense barely gets to 70?
No, is that complimentary ball? That's not even close. No, that'd be like the offense going, "Hey, no, go back out there. We don't want to play. No compliment. You didn't do a good enough job. I need you to score on defense."
Yeah. Wow. Well, I guess there was no compliments being given during that Arizona State game then.
Only at the end. Only at the end when I said, "Hey, we scored. Can you stop them one more time?"
So, Justin, you hit on a good transition statement there. You talked about explosive plays. A couple of stats that I wanted to bring up. And Ben, are you still there?
Oh, I'm here. I'm just waiting for my chance to jump in. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go, Ben. Set us up.
No, well, let me just say, Justin, great segue here into we're going to talk about some explosive plays. Brett, take it away.
Yeah. Oh, that was beautiful.
Oh, shit.
My 9th grade grammar teacher would be so proud of that transition there.
Wow. Thank you for the compliment.
Yeah.
Complimentary podcasting.
Yeah. Complimentary ball there, boys. All right. So let's talk about explosive plays. So I went back and I did a little bit of homework on how Ohio State's been scoring in the past few games. So against Oregon in the last game, they had their first 4 touchdowns at Ohio State game. Remember, that was a blowout very quickly, were 40-yard plays or more. It wasn't until the last touchdown where they actually got into the red zone and had to score from the red zone. So 4 touchdowns in that game out of 5 were 40 yards or more against Tennessee. All 4 of their touchdowns were explosive plays, and explosive play is a 20 yards or more play. All 4 of their touchdowns against Tennessee were explosive plays. So again, no red zone presence. All their scores were on explosive plays. And last, Michigan. They're against the Michigan. I'll ask Justin. Justin, how many explosive plays do you think Ohio State had against Michigan in that game?
You're trying to trick me.
Mm-hmm.
I say 0.
Oh, wrong again.
Damn you, Trebek.
Yeah. They had one explosive play in the entire Michigan game. And for our viewers, as a reminder, they lost that game 13-10, I think. And I think that one explosive play that they had was Travion Henderson catch out of the backfield that he ran for 21 yards. So it wasn't even that explosive of a play. So here's one of the blueprints for beating this team. They have scored and dominated and looked undefeatable against Oregon and Tennessee, where they've scored 7 of their 8 touchdowns on 20-yard plays or more, majority of those being 40-yard plays. In the one game that they've lost, as far as recency goes, they had one total explosive play, and it did not go for a touchdown. Texas is the number 1 defense in the country against explosive plays. How are we going to match up against Ohio State in this one as far as the explosive plays? If our defense can limit those explosive plays to a handful, majority of them not being scoring plays, I think this is going to be a very, very close matchup. I think part of that recency bias that Ben was talking about earlier is due to them being able to score from 40 yards out, 25 yards out, 30 yards out. When you take that away, can they still get into the red zone and grind it out and be able to push it into the end zone consistently? I'm very interested in that, and I feel really good about it. Even in the past game against Arizona State, how many explosive plays at Arizona State outside of their trick plays? It was like a handful. I think Scadaboo had one explosive run for the entire game where he broke several tackles and ran for 30 or 40 yards. But it was one. So I don't know if Ohio State's one of these teams that can grind out a win by, with 3 yards per carry runs and 5 yards a throw passes. I haven't been able to the past couple games.
Here's a fun stat for you there. Ohio State against Oregon, explosive plays. Passing, which means a gain of 15 yards or more. 9 plays for 270 yards. That's 95% of their total passing. I think that goes exactly what you're saying. That's absolutely insane.
Do you think, to Brett's point, do you think they get impatient? And Will Howard forces things? I mean, he's a gunslinger, and I was just thinking maybe, man, he's like a hot 3-point shooter right now. He's going to get cold, and even you miss barely, but it's still a miss. So when you're on, and you have the touch, but is it sustainable? He's a good quarterback, yes, but quarterbacks go through hot and cold streaks, and 3 really good, perfect games in a row. It's tough to do in college football. There's a lot of pressure, and the pressure's on Ohio State. Everybody
Definitely
expects them to win. So, and that wasn't the case the last 2 weeks. I think people had questions about them against Tennessee, and then people had questions about them against Oregon. Like 90% of people, I think, picked Oregon. Now I'm embellishing there, but majority of people picked Oregon. Ohio State thrives in the underdog role, and so just now that they are the favorite, how do they respond?
Well,
that's a great freaking call right there. I will say, so I was looking at explosive plays that Texas led up as well that last game. Since you brought it up, we led up 12, 5 passing plays of 15 yards or more, and 7 run plays of 10 yards or more is how we're counting it for this particular exercise. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them came in the fourth quarter, which we all agree defense was pretty beaten down at that point. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them came in the third quarter. So literally 8 of the 12 plays we're talking about came in the third and fourth quarter. And I think that, it kind of says a lot of the team just was worn down at the end of that. So, man, stop those explosive plays. And you're right. I think that gives Texas a really good chance of playing man's ball in the red zone. And we've seen that team step up time after time saying, okay, 4th and 1, you want to go for it? Let's do it.
Yeah. Right? What defense do you trust more in a goal line situation than Texas?
I will say
Um,
Ohio State versus Penn State, they stopped them in goal line situation a few times.
Penn State stopped Ohio State.
No, the opposite.
Okay.
Penn State went for it twice, at least twice in the red zone, and tried to run it. Like
Yeah. And
again,
they have a
if
good
Penn,
run game. They have a very good run
yeah,
game.
yeah. If Penn State had if they had a better offensive coordinator, they probably could have won that game.
Yeah.
They ran
I
it.
will
They
say
ran it
this:
4 times.
I love Texas defense in the fourth down, right inside the 5 yard line or so. I don't. I think that Ohio State's defense is going to be just as good. I think what it really comes down to is what play call on each team do you trust or not trust? Because if you're going to say Texas is going to run it up the middle, I'm going to say nope, I don't like that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to say Texas is going to let maybe Quinn do something, I'm all in.
Yeah. What about a little arch special in the red zone? Change it up. We didn't get to see him last game. I know we were talking about it on our text thread.
I don't know.
I'd love to see it.
I think I'm totally for it. I think you throw everything you got at this one.
Wait to see how the first couple possessions go, maybe 2 or 3, and if it doesn't work, then you do. But I think the reason that we saw it the games we saw it is because Quinn had a bum ankle. We had to do something different, right? You had to have some mobility to give yourself the option. We see that Quinn's ankle is fine. Quinn's oblique is fine. I think they're going to let Quinn run the offense the way Quinn knows how to do it and audible out of those horrible blitzes that are coming at him and just make the play. I think that the reason we did it, that was out of necessity. I don't think you have to do it right now. So I don't think you see it, in my opinion. Unless it just doesn't work. Yeah.
Justin,
I'll agree to disagree with you. I think we're going to see it.
Justin, you're the transition king. Let's talk about Quinn. Expectations.
Hold on, Ben. Hold on. Before we transition, I have a question for you because you made a really good point earlier on Will Howard. So you're talking about him being a gunslinger and trying to take away some of those deep explosive plays. So Ben, how does Will Howard's record against Texas? How does that impact him going into this game and then throughout the game?
Again, I think he plays like he has something to prove. And I think he might try to, overachieve. I think that works towards Texas's advantage. He's 0-4 against Texas. And, okay, if you look back, so last year, it was kind of the first year Texas was back. And I'm using air quotes here because we made the college football playoff and won a game. We lost the semifinal game. It was only a 14 playoff. We made the college football last year, so dominated the Big 12. So Texas was, quote, back last year. We beat him the 3 years prior, was 1 year before Sark. So Texas was kind of crap as a program and got 3 wins against Will Howard. So, Texas has better players than transfer U, Kansas State. But Will Howard is still, pretty good quarterback and one of the better ones in the Big 12. So yeah, I do think he plays like he has a chip on his shoulder, maybe something to prove, and that could work into Texas's advantage. Like we talked about, he's hot right now. He's confident. Maybe that comes back to bite him. He gets cold, tries to force things, and I think Texas defensive backs and linebackers are better than the 2 groups that he's played against in the college football playoff so far. Not to diminish Oregon in any way. Oregon had a great season, has a great defense, but statistically, Texas has a better defense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Can I pivot and chat real quick one more time before we move on to Quinn? I wanted to bring up something that I saw in PFF about Ohio State's offense. So it's an interesting thing because you have 2 really good offensive minds, Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. Chip Kelly is a run-first offense. Ryan Day loves throwing the ball all over the field, right? He hates when his quarterback runs. So right now they're kind of in this weird, maybe they found their rhythm where they know when to call which kind of play, and they're going back and forth, and they've got the athletes to do it, right? One thing that's been interesting is throughout the season, they ran counter 10% of the time throughout the regular season. 10% of their run plays were a counter play. In the playoffs, PFF says they're running it about 50% of the time. Now, if you put that into correlation with how good their offense has been recently, it's a direct correlation, right? They're running more counter. Hell, the 2 touchdown catches Jeremiah Smith had, those 2 deep balls, both of them were off of play action counter run plays. So defense has now a new wrinkle to look at. So that's kind of what we talked about is like you can look at what the team has done the whole year and you can kind of come up with, all right, XYZ, this is who the team is. But really the past 2 to 4 games is what you're going to look at when you're talking about tape. You can look at some of the old stuff because you'll find some of those other wrinkles that maybe they haven't brought back in 2 months. But if you want to look at the bulk of what they're going to play and what they're going to call, a lot of it is the past 4 games. And the last 2 games specifically, they're running a ton of counter. So be on the lookout for it. Hopefully our backside defensive linemen stay put and just get ready to make those tackles, right? Because you're going to have a lot of stunt and a lot of movement happening when that offensive line kind of takes the field for Ohio State. Additionally, I think we just kind of sprinkle this in. Like you said, Texas is one of the better secondaries in the country. We actually have 3 players playing that have a defensive rating over 85, which is elite. So say what you will about some of the Arizona State stats and how they looked or didn't look. At the end of the day, Texas has an All-American at all 3 levels on defense. So they rate very highly. They play very well when they're playing together, and they get a rest. So maybe some complimentary high-five football from the offense will help that defense really show out in this game.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is now Quinn Ewers' time. No more segmenting off of this. Let's talk Quinn. Expectations. He is now like in the top 3 of many statistical categories at the University of Texas. If he wins, I think he ties Bobby Lane for most wins as a starting quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
And then if we win again, then he beats him. So I think our expectations for Quinn, I think he gets a lot of hate. And we've even dogged him on the show a little bit, but I think the reality is he's a really good college quarterback. And my expectations for Quinn this game is to not be afraid to move a little bit. And hey, if you need to run and get 5 yards and slide, great. But just be quick and decisive. Be the Quinn that you are when the situation is urgent. I think he plays really well under pressure and urgent scenarios. And in some parts of the game, we get ahead and get a lead. Maybe he's being more conservative because he doesn't want to turn the ball over. But I think if we see Quinn's best, then he'll be the best quarterback on the field tomorrow. Brett, the Quinn apologist.
I've never said a bad thing about Quinn. Never going to. I don't know if that's actually true or not. Quinn is certainly underappreciated, and we've talked a lot about that as far as what the expectations are with a Texas quarterback. Then you have someone sitting in the back seat that with a big name like Arch Manning just puts a little bit more pressure. But I hope this isn't Quinn's last game as a Longhorn. I hope there's at least one more after this. But I do appreciate a lot of things that he does. Now, with that being said, I 100% think this game is on his shoulders. This is not a game manager game. Quinn can't go be a game manager. Sark has to unleash him. He has to unleash himself. Whatever that is that we sprinkle into his water in the fourth quarter in these overtimes to get him to take us down the field, make these unbelievable throws to Matthew Golden, Gunnar Helm, and Ryan Wingo all over the place. Whatever we need to do to get that Quinn is what we need to do to win this game, because I don't think you win this game without that. Like you said, Will Howard's a gunslinger, and they're going to score points. I think we're going to have to score points too. This is not one of those games that's going to be 13-10. I think this is going to be a higher scoring game than that. And so I think we need the best of the Quinns that we've seen. The at Michigan game, at Alabama last year type game. If we see a game like him versus Oklahoma State in his first year, or him against Georgia in the first game this year, there's zero chance that we win the game. So we need the best of him. And I hope he's thinking to himself, hey, these are my last opportunities to be a Longhorn and be the quarterback for the Longhorns. I want to go out on top, and I want to show the world what I can do for the NFL scouts, for all the Longhorn fans out there that have been watching his career. I hope that's his mentality, and I hope Sark gives him those opportunities on the offense.
Absolutely. I think this game is 100% on Quinn. I don't have a lot of confidence in the run game. I know we talked about it in the post game against Arizona State. We have this ebb and flow of the run game where they run for 200-300 yards and then they run for 60, and then they run for 200-300 yards and then they run for 40. I don't know, and I don't want to pretend to know. Maybe it's a mentality thing with the offensive line. Maybe it's a defensive thing where opponent defense goes, we can handle the run, no big deal. So I think the team will always go as far as Quinn can carry them. That being said, he is playing against the team that he first signed with, the team that he straight up stole $1 million from. And I hope he's got it invested and set for him long term, right? And maybe if he wins this game, he can buy his offensive lineman, real nice iPad. I don't know. What's a real nice Christmas toy these days, huh?
iPad? You get offensive line and iPad?
Yeah, so they can study more, all right? How about this? Go get him a jet ski, right? No sacks.
How about a season pass to Luby's Buffet?
Oh, that's just mean. How about
they sell those? How much is a Luby season pass? Look into that.
I don't know. I'm not an offensive lineman. You have to ask one of them.
Oh.
Either way, Quinn going against Ohio State is kind of a fairy tale story for him, right? So if he can come out on top, great way for him to kind of move on with his college career and play one more game for Texas. Whether he transfers or goes pro is a whole other story, right? But the team's only going to go as far as Quinn can take him. The third quarter lull is an interesting one. I don't know how we beat it. I don't know if that is a Quinn thing entirely, if it's a Sark thing like we've talked about, if it's just they're still sleeping. I don't know if they give them drugs, if they're posting on Instagram. I don't know what is happening, but they come out totally asleep. So we'll talk about the third quarter in a little bit. It's going to be one of my keys to victory if Texas is to win this. But, yeah, let Quinn rip these balls on these 20-yard outs. That was one of the most unguardable plays in college football right now. Let that happen. Let Gunnar Helm eat, right? Let Matthew Golden make those contested catches. I mean, you've got the weapons. You've got the quarterback to make it happen. You can't let things get too complicated for him. He's not fantastic at moving from like a first to second and definitely not a third read. But can you put in enough plays to where he can get these 10-yard plays? And just, I'm not saying every play has to be 10 yards, but get it in the hands of your offensive playmakers and let them go make a play. And, yeah, it's going to be up to those guys to make those plays happen as well and Sark to call the right plays. But, man, I just want to see Quinn just play free, play loose. Right? Don't be so tight. He doesn't really get, tight, I will say that. But when he feels the pressure coming, sometimes he just collapses like we talked about. He just takes a knee, right? And maybe that's part of his game because then he can come back and go, okay, instead of 1st and 10, it's 2nd and 18, whatever, here's a first down. If that's the case, Sark, please just call the plays the way that you do in the fourth quarter and beyond of most games. The fourth quarter is typically a time that Texas just excels. First quarter and fourth quarter. Just do what you do in the fourth quarter. The first quarter I know is all scripted, so it is what it is. But that fourth quarter play calling, accelerate whatever you do to get to that process, make it happen quicker. Let Quinn take this team as far as they're going to go because I just unfortunately don't believe in the run game.
We're going to need complimentary ball. We're going to need our offensive run game and our offensive pass game to shake hands, tell each other they look good in the mirror or whatever they need to do in order to get both elements going. Because I think you need both in order to win this game.
I think they just need extra zen on the sidelines.
There you go, a sixer. I did want to say one more thing. So with Quinn going against in our our run game going against Ohio State. So as we talked about, Caleb Downs, they're playing a lot of two deep safety, right? But they're bringing Caleb Downs into this 10 to 12 yard kind of hybrid role. So whatever we've been doing with that layered ball of the linebacker may not be as available. So maybe test it, see what Caleb decides to do, but just keep that in mind. However, Ohio State, I think this is PFF as well, has a 90.7 rating against the outside zone, which is our favorite type of running to do this year. We don't have a lot of power. I'd love to say that we could do it. We just don't have a lot of power run game right now. They're 90.7. I think a perfect rating is 100. So if that doesn't tell you how damn good these guys are at defending the run, I don't know what to tell you. We'll sweep it out and we'll try to move to the outside or second outside gap on the outside run. It ain't going to work, okay? They allow 0.2 yards per carry before contact. That's basically saying at the line of scrimmage, these dudes are getting hit, and a lot of it's going to happen in the backfield. I think you'll see that if you try to stretch these runs out. Ohio State's a little bit more athletic than I think what they appear to be. So don't let that be the run game that you try to do and just beat your head in the wall like we've seen over the past couple of games where it just doesn't work. And then on the offensive play calling side, on the offensive personnel side, if Cam Williams is able to play, which it looks like he's trending towards playing, Gooseby has done pretty damn well. He's a much better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. And kind of a quick stat about that, Cam Williams rates 30 points higher in run blocking than Gooseby does. So if you're going to be able to run the game, this is the first time we're going to have a fully healthy offensive line for, fingers crossed, hopefully the whole game, since Kentucky, right? Because Banks got hurt against A&M, and then Cam Williams got hurt right after that. Am I getting that confused? I think that's accurate, right? So if you're going to be able to run the game, you've got all 5 offensive linemen back in play now. If they're playing close to 100%, you have a chance to be able to run the game. Run the ball. Maybe Cam Williams, he's a lot better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. So maybe that right side is going to be the side you can expose. I don't know if that's the case or not. Because if Gooseby's in, I think you just have to avoid running to the right entirely.
Well,
Gooseby. All right, Brett, anything you want to add on Longhorns running attack?
no.
Okay. I'd like to see him run the ball. That would be great. Make this game a lot more winnable. Justin,
Sure.
I think one more note on defensive side for Ohio State. We've talked about defensive line. We mentioned linebacker. Is it Simeon or Simon? That dude looks good.
Yep.
So they always have an elite linebacker. Hey, James Laurinaitis is their I think their linebacker coach. You guys remember when
AJ Hawk and him? Oh yeah.
Well, was he there same year as AJ Hawk or was it the year after?
Yeah. Yeah, it was Laurinaitis and AJ Hawk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I remember like whenever Texas played Ohio State with Colt McCoy, like my joke was like we had a case of Laurinaitis. That guy just destroyed us. So whatever inflammation Lauren is giving out, we were in flames. But he, well, that's what, if you took medical terminology,
I did.
Yeah. So
This is the inflammation, right?
there we go. So, and yeah, he was on fire. A short NFL career, probably due to concussions, but really good linebacker. So he's on the sidelines for them, and somewhat they're kind of up there in the linebacker U conversation, maybe Miami, Penn State. But anyway, so really good linebacker, and then really good defensive back, Caleb Downs. Was he second on the in the Thorpe Award ballots or third? He was up there. Maybe Travis Hunter was second and Caleb Downs was third, but he was in the top 5. Yep. So we talked about it a little bit earlier. You mentioned he's kind of more of a rover type player, I think. So he's a guy I think we got to watch out for, and he's a difference maker in that secondary.
And I would stand corrected. AJ Hawk did not play with James Laurinaitis. They played back to back. My bad.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, you're good. Hey, James Laurinaitis, by the way, his dad was a wrestler too, I think. So kind of why he was so good and crazy. Finish up there, Justin.
I just wanted to say, my bad for that. I did want to talk about, you were talking about those two guys, and it kind of brings up, obviously, the history of this matchup between these two, great programs, which we never really talked about. Texas leads it 2-1. They've only played, they played each other in 04, 05, and 07. Where have these games been? We should have been playing each other a lot more besides that. But 04, Vince went into the Horseshoe and beat them on that. Was it a throw to Limas Tweed? Is that who that was?
How sweet! Yeah, how sweet it is. Was the newspaper the next day?
I was celebrating my grandma's it was like her 85th or 80th birthday at that point. And we had a little TV up at the bar. We were all just hanging out. I was not of age to drink, but we were at an area where we had a bar that we could set up, and what a game. And then even the game that came back where those Colts were at second start of his career, still a pretty damn good game, right? And that was a really good team. I think they had Terrell Pryor and all that on the offensive side. And
The
then,
only reason Texas lost that game is Billy Pittman fumbled it and they ran it back for a touchdown.
yeah,
Otherwise, that game Texas had to win.
yeah. And then the third game was it the Fiesta Bowl in
It was the Fiesta Bowl.
08? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
08,
That's the
09.
That's the Colt McCoy spin move game.
Yeah, that's the Quan Cosby diving through the end zone game, right? Or into the end zone for the game winner. I mean,
Yes.
talk about like just three fantastic games. If we can get anything like that tomorrow, I'd be excited to watch it. Yes, I'd love to see a blowout, Texas win, but man, like really cool history between these two teams. Excited to see them run it back for a fourth time.
Hey, we're getting a little bit older. We don't need this on our heart. Like last weekend was enough on my heart. I don't need another heart-stopping game.
You just need to drink decaf coffee, man.
Nope, not going to do that either.
All right.
What else do y'all have?
Is Isaiah Bond playing this game?
You bet.
Yeah.
As healthy as he's been in probably 8 weeks, too.
Yeah.
Is this the best quarterback Texas has played all year?
No.
I don't think so.
Who do you guys have ahead?
Klubnik.
Klubnik and Levitt.
Okay.
Howard's not bad. He's just he's not that level.
We talked penalties, I think, ad nauseum early. I think Brett mentioned in our pre-call Texas is as healthy as they've ever been
this year. Since the Derek Williams knee injury against OU, we've had several different injuries. Obviously, we had the Quinn injury. We had Kelvin Banks, Cameron Williams, Trey Wisner, Jaden Blue was all banged up. As far as I know, outside of the guys that are out for the year, this is as healthy as this team's been. And what a great time to be there too, right? Hopefully you're running on all cylinders at this point in time, and the playbook is not limited by a lack of players.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm excited with if Bond is truly healthy. I think that might be the difference in some of these offensive schemes with just stretching the field. We just need to hit on one of these explosive plays downfield, and it opens so much more up. Now, I think Brett, you want to see him on some jet sweeps as well. That would be awesome. We could take advantage of this. I think he's got 4.3 speed. So that would be nice to take advantage of and stretch him sideways and then hit him down the field.
Love it.
Justin, when was the last time Texas was an underdog in a football game?
That would have been 2 years ago when we played at Alabama. We started as a 10-point dog, and I think we ended up as a touchdown dog. So it's about 27 straight games by my count, but my mom always said don't do math live on air. So don't quote me on that. But yeah, and somehow, some way, ESPN FPI still has Texas as a 50.5, 51% chance to win. I don't know if they know something that bookmakers don't or what the case is, but as we've said in the past, the line doesn't project what the score is actually going to be. It's literally just there to get 50% bets on one side and 50% bets on the other, or 50% of the money on one side, 50% of the money on the other. Because at the end of the day, Vegas just wants to make money. They don't really care what the score is.
I think ESPN FBI has been watching our podcast, and that's why it's 51%.
We're just pumping them up. Yeah, ESPN FBI loves Texas. They love looking at like stars and stuff like that, and I think Texas just has a lot of their highly rated players.
Loves advanced stats.
I think there's a lot of they're taking advantage of what the eye test tells you these last 2 weeks that Ohio State's the best team in college football, and
the look ahead line. If you would have put a bet on, okay, we think it's going to be Texas versus Ohio State in this game before either one of them played their semifinal game, or I'm sorry, their quarterfinal game, Texas was a 4-point favorite. Exact same matchup. If you would have said both these teams win, but because of how each team won, it's a 10-point swing on the line. So that doesn't tell you that Vegas doesn't care about the actual score of the game. They just look at that and go, recency bias, you got to change this up. That's all it is.
All right. Well, let's last segment, give you guys each a chance to finalize any more keys to victory, players of the game, any bold takes if you want, and score prediction, and then we'll close out for this. Justin, Why don't you
I
go
had
first here?
one more thing that we
Yeah,
didn't get to
just go
talk
ahead.
about. Ryan Day versus Steve Sarkisian. They both had their ups and downs. All right. Ryan Day can't beat Michigan. Sarkisian, never won a championship. He's obviously had some great offenses. He's had some Heisman winners. He's had players in the NFL. Same with Ryan Day. Lately, Sark has been better in the big games, especially on the offensive side. And the defense typically plays very, very well, especially recently. Is this a game where some of their bad habits on either side show up? Where maybe Ryan Day starts to put too much pressure on Chip Kelly and say, no, I want this play call, or Sark, paralysis by analysis and just can't get the right play calls in time or make the right adjustments, whatever the case is. I mean, it's going to be coming down to those two guys. I think this is such an even matchup if you really want to look at like paper, right? That who can motivate their team the best to play in this particular spot. And last thing about that is, does Texas need to show up in maize and blue? Brett, what you got?
What was your question?
Should Texas show up in maize and blue? Should we just change our colors and just show up in Michigan's colors and see what happens?
I'll tell you that. I'll tell you what. If we did that, my father-in-law would completely disown Texas. Right now, my father-in-law's number one team is Ohio State, and so I know he's going to be listening to this podcast. So, hey, Gary, the Ohio State is going to get their ass beat tomorrow. So, text me back on that. But yeah, if Texas went out there in the yellow and blue, I think Gary would no longer be a secondary Texas fan. So that'd be the only unfortunate thing. But yeah, then we'd guarantee ourselves a win. So that would be nice.
I got to hear later if y'all have a pajama bet on the game, by the way. But let me know your thoughts. What do you think about the coaching matchup? I feel like that's the one thing we haven't really talked about.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna talk about it kind of in my closing, but what I really like about this matchup is that I feel like Sarkisian has a little bit of pressure off of him in this game, being the underdog.
Yeah.
Right?
Big time.
He doesn't have to play our favorite word. He doesn't have to play Manila ball in this game. He can unleash, and I think that's what he has to do. I think it especially goes one-on-one with Quinn. He has to kind of unleash the offense, unleash the playbook, and just start spreading it out. Because I think to that point, you're going to have to score points to win this game. Like I said, this isn't a 13-10 game. You're gonna have to score some points. So I really like the ability of Sarkisian in this, being the underdog, having nothing to hold back in this one. Clearly was holding back in Arizona State. That was a very, very basic offense that we rolled out there. But hey, this one, you've got all your playmakers, you have all your play calls, your entire playbook, you've got specialty packages, in waiting that maybe you haven't used yet this year. If that's the case and he unleashes it and doesn't have that pressure on him, I put the advantage Sarkisian over Ryan Day. I think Ryan Day, you put him in the same situation like he was against Michigan, where he's a significant favorite in this game. I think that puts a little bit of pressure on him. Maybe it reduces his ability to play free or to call the game that would let them play free. So I think Sarkisian in this coaching matchup, but I'm also a little biased.
Yeah, it is definitely interesting with Texas being about a touchdown underdog, because it does feel like a lot of pressures on Ohio State to perform the way they have the past 2 weeks and to put that $30 million roster to use, right? Not to say Texas didn't spend a lot of money. I mean, together out there's going to be $50 million of NIL packages, right? So take that for what it's worth, but, not saying that, you can buy your roster these days, but there's something that says you can't. So if either one of these teams loses, it's considered not a bad season, but an underachieving season, right? And Texas was in this position last year and they had a chance to go to the finals, and they didn't make it. I think if they go to the finals, I think they beat Michigan personally last year. I just don't think it was a bad matchup for us. And it's a styles make fights is what the saying was. I had to get that right in my head too. Yeah. Now, Washington against us last year was a bad matchup for us, period, end of story.
Terrible,
and Penix playing, his best game of his career. This is going to be an interesting one. Either team that loses, it's going to be considered an underachieving season. if you want to talk about the way the fans are viewing it, if you want to talk about the way that those players are going to see themselves, either team that loses is going to be about, yeah, this is underachieving. It sucks that they have to play in the semifinals. They should have been a finals game. It would have been even better. I digress. It is definitely more pressure on Ryan Day. How can he perform in that moment? It's a great call. I don't know for sure. I don't watch Ohio State all that closely, but I do know that there's something about some big games. Why hasn't he been able to get them over the top? Right? We talked about that TikTok or whatever that's out there where Urban Meyer is playing a video game and he's driving a bus down a highway all nice and calmly, and he hands his controller over to Ryan Day and it just immediately drives off a cliff. Like, how did you go from what Urban Meyer had, where you won the very first college football playoff, to what it is now, and you haven't been to a final since? Right? They've made a couple of these. I think they've made 5 or so of these, or maybe more. So there's definitely pressure on Ryan.
State perspective. Oh man, we can't make it to the final in the college football playoff.
Right? Exactly. Exactly.
Let me tell you this about the whole Ohio State thing. If Ohio State loses this season was an abysmal failure, because not only did you lose to Michigan, so like what most Ohio State fans would tell you is even if they win the national championship, there is an asterisk on it.
Yeah.
If you lose this one, oh my gosh, garbage.
You didn't win the Big Ten championship. You didn't even make it to the Big Ten championship. You didn't beat Michigan, and you didn't make it to the finals. It's a lot of pressure. And I'm not saying that it's not the same in Texas. At least we beat OU. And we made it to our championship.
And A&M. Don't forget our little brother rivals. They're back in this now.
Oh, I forgot they existed. My bad.
So
welcome back.
Hey, internet troubles here. So the question is Sark versus Ryan Day.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're Ryan Day, like you said, was handed a great program. And he's not been able to win a championship. It's eluded him. And they've had great rosters, great teams. CJ Stroud, great quarterback. Not able to beat Michigan, their big rival. There are years Texas failed to beat Bob Stoops several years in a row, but I don't know if we lost 4 in a row. So I do think the pressure's on Ryan Day. They've got the bigger NIL budget on their team. I think Sark has rebuilt Texas. So he inherited a program that had gone through 3 or 4 dud head coaches after Mac Brown. Ryan Day is like coach in waiting almost, with Urban Meyer's whole whatever reason he retired. But Ryan Day was handed a Lamborghini, and you can't get to the finish line. So, so my main point here is I think great teams, like if you look at Alabama, they did not blow out everybody with Nick Saban as a head coach. They were, and same with Georgia, like the years they go undefeated, like the margin of winning in football is razor thin. And it comes down, I think, to coaching your players to make the right plays in situations, and then you as a coach making the right call in the situation. And I think that's where Kirby and Saban have exceeded where other coaches have failed, and that's why they have so many more championship game appearances and so much success of late. Their decision making in games and their ability to prepare their players in a way other teams cannot. And maybe that's where Ryan Day has failed. And I think in our own conversations where Sark has failed is these little game situations and play calling that does not put his players in the best position to win. Sometimes he looks like a genius and sometimes he misses. And if you miss just enough times, you lose a game. And so I think that, again, these coaches are both very good. I think if one of them, whichever one wins this game, I think goes up on higher above the other one, making it to a college football championship game. Maybe Day has been there. I can't remember. He's been there 5 or 6 years now. I don't think he's been to one. So
I don't think so either.
I think getting there is a big deal in this day and age. So did I answer all your questions?
Good catch up. You answered well.
So would you want to do bold take predictions now? Okay, Brett, why don't you lead us off, and then I'll close.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have any bold takes for this game. I don't think this is a bold take kind of game. I think this is going to be a game where you're going to have complementary ball all over the place. I think there's going to be a few people that make some explosive plays. I mean, I think Quinn Ewers is the guy to watch. I think our run game, if we can get over 120 yards on the ground, it's going to put us in a much better position compared to weeks like last week. My keys to victory, explosive plays is number one, right? Texas has to create explosive plays, and they have to completely eliminate Ohio State's explosive plays. Like we mentioned earlier, Ohio State, of their last 8 touchdowns, 7 of them were on explosive plays. You take those away, it's a much more competitive ball game, and Texas's defense is going to have to do that to make it competitive. And then on the other side, we're going to have some explosive plays. We're going to have some of those Isaiah Bond jet sweeps that go for 30, 40 yards down the field, maybe a touchdown. Some of those trick plays, where we see the 41st acre hated like fake zone run screen pass,
No.
right? That freaks everybody out and then goes for 30 yards. We might have to see that. We might have to see some other plays that create some explosions for this offense. So there's that. Penalties. Justin hit on it big this one. Ohio State is top 10 in penalties per game. Texas is top 100. We are terrible in it. I think we double the amount of penalties per game that Ohio State is penalized for. You have to eliminate that. You can't have those, especially pre-snap in this type of game, especially ones that put you behind the chains early, because first down is going to be important. And then the last one is coaching, which we just hit on. Sarkisian has to unleash the playbook. He has to let his players play free. When Sarkisian does that, you think about that Alabama versus was it Georgia in the national championship game where who was that stud receiver that won the Heisman for them?
Devonta
no,
Smith.
not Waddle.
Devontae Smith. Sorry,
Devontae Smith. Yeah, plays ones like that where you get your playmakers in space and let them play. That's the kind of play calling that Sarkisian needs to do, and he needs to win the coaching battle. He has to outcoach Ryan Day, and he has the upper hand being the underdog in this one. Catch them a little bit off guard. Maybe they're a little bit overconfident, and you can exploit that with good coaching. So with all that said, those are my keys to the victory. Ultimately, I think Texas, if you asked me 2 days ago, I think Texas loses this game. Today, based on the stats given by Justin, some of the research that Ben and I have done, and just, being completely biased, I think Texas comes out on top 30-24.
There it is. Ben, do you want to go or do you want me to?
I'm happy to go, and you can close us out.
Okay.
My score prediction is Texas winning 28-23. I think they can hold Ohio State to some field goals. So I think you can do the math on field goals and touchdowns if you'd like. But I think this is, I think there's a lot of hype that this is going to be a high scoring game. And I think it's going to be the opposite. Now I do think if this is a shootout, I think either team can win. If it's a blowout one way or the other, I think it's in Ohio State's favor. But a lot of things we talked about, Texas needs to take care of the football, win first down, get to third and manageable. My score prediction has no field goals from Texas. So, we just need to find a way to score touchdowns in the red zone. I think whichever team does that better is going to win. I do think we're going to see limited explosive plays, to Brett's point, on both sides of the ball. Which team can win the red zone? I think Texas, due to some of their recent wars and wins in the red zone, I think they're going to win that battle and ultimately come out on top. So yeah, we're a little biased, but Vegas is a little biased too sometimes, and Texas totally has a shot to win this game, and we expect them to. We expect this Texas team under Sark to get to a national championship. That's what he's been building for a few years. Let's make it happen.
I like it. Yeah, I'm man. Like I told you guys before, after the games last week, I said, man, Texas won't even be within 10. Ohio State's just too damn good. Texas doesn't look like they're running on all cylinders. They look flat. They're going to be tired, yada, yada, yada. So, that being said, if Texas is to win, I think Quinn, Anthill, and Jade are your players of the game. Anthill stopping the run, maybe getting a sack or two. Jade, he's not going to one-on-one against Jeremiah the whole time, but doing what he has to do to shut down the pass game. And Quinn, got to let Quinn be Quinn. Putting up 350 and 3 touchdowns, something like that. That's what you got to have out of Quinn if you're going to be able to win this game. Again, if Texas is to win, you got to stop the pass rush, right? You can't let them get to Quinn. You've got to stop their run. You got to pressure Will Howard up the middle, like we talked about. You've got to either have a 2-score lead. No, that's probably one or the other. You either have to have a 2-score lead going into halftime, or you have to have a tie for third quarter. I'm not saying you have to win the third quarter, but if you don't have a 2-score lead at halftime, then you got to at least tie the third quarter. It could be 7-7, it could be 10-10, 3-3, 0-0, whatever. You can't lose the third quarter if you don't have a 2-score lead, because we know we can get off to a quick start. Ohio State can too. But we know we can get off to a quick start, and we know we can close out games. It's that middle portion. So going from halftime to into third quarter is going to be the most important part in regards to the score. Penalties, as we talked about, winning first down and penalties, obviously huge. My bold take: Helm and Golden outgained Smith and Egbuka. All right,
Nice.
I like our defense against their guys, and I like what Quinn does when he hyper focuses on Helm and Golden. So I could see that as a bold take happening right there. 200 and maybe 20 yards between the two of them. I mean, I know Smith can do that by himself, but that's my bold take for the moment. For the first time, as we said, Texas is an underdog since Alabama last year. And unfortunately, boys, for the first time in the history of this podcast, I am predicting Texas to lose 30-28. I don't want it to happen. I've told you all the reasons why I think Texas can win. And if Texas is to win, I think we're going to check a lot of those boxes I just mentioned. I just don't know if Texas is going to do it. We plan on being there. We got tickets. I hope I'm wrong. Y'all know I want them to win, but right now, I just don't know if the pathway is there for it to fully happen. And I didn't even say anything about special teams.
If
I would have.
Had I known what your prediction was going to be and you would have given us some, I would have never let you go last. That's the worst way to end this podcast. So I'm gonna repeat some things. So Texas is going to eliminate explosive plays for Ohio State. We're going to manage our penalties to a manageable number, and we're going to win the coaching, and Texas is going to win 30-24.
There you go. I love it. Let's go, baby.
Okay. Unfiltered, a little biased, 100% truthful. You heard it here, folks. 2 for Texas, 1 for Ohio State. Unfortunately, we did not come to a consensus this week. So we'll come up with some sort of punishment for Justin when he's wrong, and we will talk about it. We'll talk about it on our post-game recap. So looking forward to the game. Another playoff game tonight. Hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em, guys.
Notre Dame all the way.